must be hard for you to, spend 25 years talking about tariffs as being negative and then have somebody explain to you that you're totally wrong. It'll have it.
Whether you think Trump being back is a great idea or a nightmare, there's no denying one thing: the guy shakes things up. How is it going to affect your career in freight and now that he's in charge again? Will it be a game changer or a setback? So let's start by zooming out a bit. Historically, Trump was all about cutting regulations. His focus was on loosening rules across a lot of different industries. Trucking was definitely included in that mix. So think back to the hours of service changes in 2020. He gave drivers a lot more flexibility.
They will help drivers reach their destination safely without feeling like they've got to race against the clock to comply with federal mandates.
He made changes like adding an extra 2 hours of driving time in bad weather and allowing drivers to split up their sleeper berth rest periods into more flexible segments. And that change impacted about 3.5 million truck drivers, giving them more control over their schedules. So now that Trump is back in, are we going to see the same push towards deregulation? And if so, who really benefits? Truckers could definitely win here. More flexibility means more miles, which means more pay and more control over their schedules. But what about us brokers? Less regulation could mean fewer hoops to jump through, which speeds things up and makes things easier overall. But there's a downside. Less oversight could open the door for more double brokers, which I know we're all experiencing right now. Scammers, shady operators who cut corners. So for newer brokers, this could be a very tough landscape, since they'll have to work even harder to stand out as trustworthy in a more crowded, chaotic market. Are we headed towards a scenario where only the most credible freight brokers survive? Definitely something to keep in mind. So now let's talk about trade policies. Under Trump, we saw all sorts of tariffs on goods from China and Europe and pretty much everywhere. Specifically between 2018 and 2019, he slapped on 10 to 25% tariffs on Chinese goods. And that affected over $360 billion worth of imports. So back then, this led to a significant drop in the number of goods coming into the US, and brokers had to adjust quickly. So some found new opportunities with domestic manufacturers, while others struggled to find these relationships. So you might be thinking, well, I just moved domestic loads, so why should I care? But here's the thing. When international freight gets disrupted, it creates a ripple effect. And for example, back in 2019, when we saw a 16% drop in imports due to tariffs, which meant less freight coming in through the ports, that led to fewer loads, leading to domestic transport. So during that time, a lot of brokers had to quickly shift gears, finding new opportunities with local manufacturers instead of relying on imports. Those who adopted found new contracts, and those who didn't really felt the squeeze. So now, with Trump back in the office, it's possible we'll see similar disruptions to international freight. So if that happens, you have to make the pivot to domestic manufacturing if import volume takes a hit. So back in 2019, when those tariffs hit, US manufacturing went up by about 1.3%. So if you're a broker, this could mean jumping in on more manufacturing contracts right now. So the guys who are ready to crush it in sales and build those relationships are going to be in the best spot to win when everyone else is scrambling. Let's shift gears and talk about fuel prices. One thing we can give Trump credit for, he was very vocal about boosting domestic energy production.
We got some big rig truckers taking over the 5 freeway. They're basically out here protesting higher fuel prices. We're all feeling that pinch, but these guys make their living, and this is really cutting into their bottom line.
Since my very first day in office, I have been moving at record pace to cancel these regulations and to eliminate the barriers to domestic energy production like never before.
So during his term from 2017 to 2020, oil production in the U.S. went from 8.9 million barrels per day to 12.3 million. And that's a huge jump. And it meant lower fuel prices. So if we see the same pattern again, we could be looking at cheaper diesel. Now, cheaper fuel is great for truckers. Lower costs, more money in their pocket. But here's the catch. If fuel costs drop, you can bet that shippers are going to start expecting lower freight rates. So even if trucking companies are saving money on fuel, will those savings trickle down to us brokers, or will we be expected to pass those right on to the shipper? It's something to keep an eye on. And then there's infrastructure. Trump was always talking big about infrastructure spending. Remember that $1.5 trillion infrastructure plan that he proposed in 2018? It didn't end up being quite that big, but we did see about $200 billion in federal funding.
Billions and 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 billions.
With a lot of focus on getting states and private companies to chip in. So more highways and bridge projects would be huge for us in logistics. Fewer delays, better routes, more efficiency. And now that Trump is back, we could push for another wave of infrastructure spending. The question is, are you ready to position yourself for these contracts when they start moving? So if you're building your brokerage or looking to build a brokerage or looking to level up your sales game, now is the time to get ready. Less regulation means things are going to move faster. So if you can prove you're a credible option, you'll stand out when the market starts getting flooded with new brokers trying to jump in. And now is the time to get ahead of that. And when fuel costs and trade shifts start affecting how brokers think, you've got to be the one who knows how to adjust your pitch and deliver solutions. So those who are ready to adapt are going to be the ones who thrive in this market. Trump's return is already bringing changes for us in freight.
Billions and billions and
Some of those changes might be tough, but they also open up a ton of opportunity for those willing to grab it right now. And if you want to make sure you're in the best position to take advantage of all this, whether you're building your brokerage or you want to dominate your sales game, come say hey to me in Discord, and the link is below. Also, side note, how crazy is it that I managed to get the official freight broker username on YouTube like a week ago? That I tried like a year ago and it wasn't there. I'm just saying. Also, drop a comment below. Do you think Trump's return is going to be good or bad for freight right now?
billions and billions and billions and billions and billions and billions.
Stay ahead, stay profitable, and keep on trucking.